Okay, so for recording number 2 and for our class discussion, I've asked the class to kind of focus in on the first page of the busy social brain and this idea of a mirror neuron. And then, so let's actually start the conversation off with that situation. What is a mirror neuron? Has anybody ever heard of a mirror neuron before? So Lily and Hannah, I see you kind of nodding your heads a little bit. Lily, do you want to share a little bit? What have you heard about and read about in here? What is a mirror neuron?
What I've heard about is it's like the reason why we yawn when we see other people yawn, because they sort of just automatically go through those pathways and just mirror whatever they see. Or like if we see somebody like moving their leg or tapping their foot,
we might start doing the same thing. Hannah, have you heard rather similar?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the yawn thing.
So the yawn thing. So the idea of mirror neurons are actually considered very important for social learning theory. Is anybody familiar with Bandura's social learning theory? How does Bandura say we learn about things? Kate, any thought? Do you remember Bandura's theory on social learning?
Wasn't it that we learn social things through how we see our parents act?
Yeah, we learn things by observing others, and there's always been a lot of questions about that. But the mirror neurons, the fact that we have these neurons in our brain that seem to be activated when we simply watch other people do things. They seem to be activated, has been very exciting in the field of cognitive neuroscience, that we have these neurons that work in these ways. And this article basically says we have these mirror neurons in our brain. Of course, they start talking about the premotor cortex and the frontal lobe and some other key brain areas, which makes it what field? Sam, what field does that turn this into? Yeah, cognitive neuroscience. Here's where it is in the brain. And this study is going to really try to understand that a bit better. So let's turn to page 2 of the article and kind of go through on. And I do, with the other articles we have today, we won't be going into so much detail. This one, we will be going into detail. And hopefully you'll get a better understanding of what they were up to and what they found. So they employed a study here. And what did they basically do in this study? Madison, what were they up to here?
They basically gave their participants either an easy number to remember, like an easy phone number, or a hard phone number, as well as watching a video, and they were given a task on either watching how the person acted in the video, what they were doing, like what was their goal, how they were doing it, and asking them to explain it afterwards.
So they basically had people watch, and in the stimulus, a very simple video, a silent 5-second video of a male actor performing an ordinary object-directed action with his hand. So a very simple scene. They were being asked to do this. They manipulated, one of the factors they say there was the cognitive load. So the cognitive load, in what Madison was saying there, what was the cognitive load bit there?
The phone number that they had to remember?
Yeah, the easy versus the difficult phone number situation was the cognitive load. What do you think their reason was for doing this? Sam, what do you think their reason was for manipulating the cognitive load?
Probably to see if things with lower cognitive loads are easier to learn.
Yeah, would it be easier to learn and kind of follow things and process things? And at the same time, so one of the variables they manipulated there, very much to the point, it was a 2x4 design. How many independent variables there? This would be important to know. How many IVs there? It's a 2x4 design. How many IVs? There were actually, there were 8 conditions here, but there were only 2 independent variables. One was cognitive load with 2 levels. So the first 2 is actually the number of levels. The 4 goes into what? What is the 4?
Oh, the goal they wanted them to focus on.
The goal that they wanted them to focus on. So observed something, try to understand what is going on, the motive behind it, or understanding what the action was about, how. So why do you think they did that? What do you think the logic was there? Any idea on what the logic was there? Say again? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. See what kind of works with your memory, and most importantly, as opposed to measuring a cognitive activity, they wanted to see what's going on in your brain when you're doing this. So it was kind of a cognitive neuroscience thing. They were interested in seeing these mirror neurons and what was going on. So it was a 2x4 design, 2 independent variables. The first one was kind of the load, easy or hard. The second one was the goal. Which goal would you think would be the easiest?
The one where you just watch it.
Just watch it. So just watch this and observe this. And then it kind of went up, watch and observe, action, try to understand what the person is doing, try to understand why he is doing it, and try to understand how he is doing it. So what is the goal? So they wanted to do this. So is this an attentional type of experiment? Would you call this attention? Is this in the field of attention? Why would you say yes?
Because they have to give their attention in order to be able to answer the question.
And it's kind of what kind of task? You're watching this 5-second video and at the same time doing other things. So it's kind of like an attentional type of situation here, but it turns into cognitive neuroscience because we want to see, how about these mirror neurons? What's going on with the motor neurons, the mirror neurons in the brain? So they employed this very unique strategy to understand this. And if we keep going along, we get the image acquisition, the image analysis. Notice they have a section on the 3rd page, neuroimaging results. If you really want to go and figure out kind of the key, what did they find, where should you go in the article?
Discussion.
The beginning part of the discussion. So this was about automaticity, they say. What should have been pretty automatic here? Which condition should have been pretty automatic here? So it's a 2x4 design, so we have easy versus hard cognitive load and 4 different levels of goal. Which one of these should have been the easiest? Bella, any thought about that?
I think the observation probably would have been the easiest.
Just observation when combined with,
The easy cognitive.
yeah, the easy 5, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that was, the easy situation. So what they report here in the beginning of the discussion, the automaticity of mirror neurons, it looks like when you're doing these things, the mirror neuron system, and they talk about the various areas, the premotor cortex, which is kind of the mirror neuron area. You see a lot of activation there. And what else do they say there? There was one really important finding here. Let's see. So if we read through this, we report evidence regarding the activation of areas within the mirror neuron system was unaffected by load. So load didn't seem to matter for these mirror neurons working. In contrast, activation of areas within the mentalizing system, mainly that prefrontal area, was modulated by load only when participants were prompted to attribute observable actions to a motive. Why? Why is this person doing this activity? So the mirror neuron system works with automatic behaviors, but when you're asked why, what does that put on for the cognitive load? Does that put on a lot when you're asked, why is this person doing this? So maybe when the mirror neurons are working, they're not so activated under these particular situations. If you're just watching, mirror neurons watching somebody, what? Scratch their face. Actually, I've done that at times in class. I go in and I start doing this and people in the class. So watching people yawn or rub their eyebrow, as the case may be, you can just watch and observe and those mirror neurons will be working. But when you're asked to do that extra cognitive process of why is this going on, and you're given a cognitive load, these motor neurons or these mirror neurons are not nearly as activated. So they come to the conclusion that the mirror neuron system works very well with automatic processing, because just watching and observing and seeing the action is very automatically processed, attentionally. But when you're asked why, that really puts a cognitive load. So I found this to be kind of an interesting experiment, and I hope you found it interesting as well. Any comments or questions about this particular article? Okay, so we'll stop the second recording here. And now what we're going to do for people who are in the online version of this class, we're going to actually not spend as much time, but we're going to look at some of these other articles. So if you want to take a look at these other articles, and we're going to look at kind of the abstract and just kind of go through them, I'm going to stop the recording here.